Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba is expected to meet with the International Monetary Fund Managing Director Christine Largade, this after holding talks with rating agencies Moody's, Fitch and Standard & Poor's. The minister and his team from the Treasury and the Reserve Bank will later head to New York to meet investors on Monday. Our UN correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease spoke to the minister.
We've been explaining to them they were asking us a number of questions about our policy direction, about our fiscal direction, and we've been explaining to them the different steps that we are taking in order to ensure inclusive growth in the country, to ensure that the South African economy grows so that we can address whatever challenges economically, because the concern about unemployment, poverty and inequality in South Africa is not only a South African concern, but the global institutions are looking at the steps that we are taking in order to address this. The IMF meetings themselves, as we are here, they are the issues of inclusive growth are topmost on the agenda. Every country is focusing on this, and so there is that concern, especially because emerging markets are playing a critical role in ensuring global economic recovery, and South Africa being a member of the G20 countries, being a member of the IMF structures, it plays an important role in that regard. And so we discussed it and discussed the issues of uncertainties which they've been raising about the stability in the country, the political direction we are taking. But look, when we look at all of it, the IMF, in all the discussions that we've been having in international monetary and financial committees, the issues of geopolitical risks emanating in all the regions have been raised prominently. The political uncertainties in the United States, in the UK, in countries in Europe, with elections coming and the likelihood of the election of governments that are more protectionist.
Of course, in France on Sunday.
In France on Sunday, and there is a greater tendency towards deglobalization, with many countries limiting trade, international trade, which is quite important for African countries. So the political risks and instability and uncertainties are not only unique and limited to South Africa, but virtually every region faces similar challenges. They may be different in terms of form and substance, but they are there globally.
So South Africa is not the only country to face economic challenges. Having said all that, Minister, did you get a sense from Moody's, because Moody's is the only ratings agency that is yet to make a decision? We are 2 notches above sub-investment grade in terms of their current rating. Did you get a sense that you have managed to stave off this downgrade or otherwise?
We are engaging with them. They are open to discussions with us. They are coming down to South Africa in May. We have agreed with them that we will engage further. We will even line up a number of other stakeholders for them to engage with. The same applies to Fitch, even though they've already downgraded us, but there is a commitment among all the ratings agencies to continue engaging with us. And so we are quite optimistic that we may be able to stave off a further sub-investment downgrade. We are also optimistic that with the passage of time, we will be able to restore our investment grade.
Minister, earlier this week we talked about the meaning of radical economic transformation and how it relates to inclusive growth, and your words were that they tend to speak the same language. But you have also said that investors should not concern themselves with certain debates that are happening in the context of a democracy like South Africa. As an IMF economist told me, investors need to know what the rules of the game are. They seek predictability. Is South Africa offering predictability given the debates that are currently happening in the country today?
I think South Africa has been consistent in terms of its economic policies for the last 23 years since we've been a democracy. We are a mixed economy. There is a strong public sector, there is a strong private sector. And the extent of the role played by either one of these sectors depends depends on the balance of the evidence on the ground. In some instances, you've got a strong public sector to address market failures and to ensure greater access, particularly by members of the public, to what are public goods, and to ensure that there is that we address equitable access to various programs in the economy in the country. So there is also not both the public and the private sector are mutually reinforcing. There is a greater interaction between the two sectors, because when your state-owned companies provide economic infrastructure, it is in order to facilitate economic activity, investments by the private sector. So there is consistency with regard to that. We are concerned about addressing issues of inclusive growth, the economic marginalization of the majority. And South Africa is not about to take stupid decisions that are going to ruin our economy, isolate us not only from the African continent, but isolate us from the world as a whole. And so in that regard, we believe that South Africa offers stability, offers certainty in terms of our economic policy. And the debates that take place, I still wish to reiterate, people must take comfort in the fact that we are in actual fact not advocating for moving out of the global economic arrangements, but rather we are talking about strengthening our economy so that we can greater integrate in the global economic environment.
One more question before you go. You meet with the IMF managing director tomorrow. You go to New York on Monday to meet with investors. You know, the good news is that emerging markets are the order of the day today. They are very popular these days. Commodities are up, which benefits South Africa. Inflation is just about where the Reserve Bank wants it, between the 3 and 6% range. The rand seems to have clawed itself back to close to 13 rand to the dollar after the cabinet reshuffle. How would you sum up your week here, your days in Washington so far, given the fact that there seems to be a very positive momentum in the global economy?
I think that we've been focusing singularly on addressing concerns about South Africa, but selling South Africa at the same time, but also, representing the African continent, because we are a part of a continent that is growing, but a continent that faces many challenges, including risks. And so I think overall, we have had a good engagement with different sectors. We've been able to market the African continent, to represent Africa in the various institutions such as the G20 and the IMF. So there is goodwill towards South Africa, a great momentum going about South Africa, and we think that there is only great strides to be made going forward.